inside the courtroom is heavy, the kind of silence that feels almost suffocating. At the center of it all stands Tyler Robinson, once a name buried in police reports, now a man whose fate has captured national attention. Shackled and subdued, he is no longer the figure prosecutors painted during the trial, but a human being stripped of pride, staring into the face of final judgment. Today, Robinson does not argue innocence, nor does he lash out in anger. Instead, he does something many never expected. He begs. His words, trembling yet deliberate, are not just for the judge, but for the families of those forever scarred by his actions, and for a society still divided over how justice should be served. For prosecutors, this is the moment they have pressed toward for months, the final opportunity to demand the ultimate penalty. For the defense, it is the last chance to humanize a client portrayed as a monster in headlines. For the victims' families, it is the day they hope will bring closure, or at least certainty, after years of grief. But beyond these walls, the case has sparked a larger debate, one that stretches far past the courthouse. What does justice truly mean? Is the death penalty a rightful consequence, or a cycle of violence that denies the possibility of redemption? Across the country, people are watching closely, each with their own opinion, their own sense of what is right and what is unforgivable. This is not just the story of a crime, a trial, or even a sentencing. It is the story of a man standing at the edge of life and death, pleading for mercy in a system built on both justice and judgment. And as the judge prepares to speak, one question hangs heavier than any other. Will Tyler Robinson's plea save him from the death sentence, or will the law demand the highest price for his actions? Asterisk. Before we dive into this story, remember this is Detective Kate, True Crime, a channel that stands for justice and giving every case the attention it deserves. Drop a comment and let me know where you're watching from. Hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on the bell so you don't miss any of our investigations. And don't forget, share your thoughts and theories below. Every clue counts. The courtroom is tense, its walls carrying the weight of history and judgment. The polished wooden benches are filled to capacity on one side, members of the victim's family sit in quiet sorrow, their faces etched with pain that time has not erased. On the other, journalists and members of the public lean forward, waiting to record every word, every movement. At the front, the judge presides with solemn authority, her black robe a symbol of the justice system that has brought everyone to this moment. The air feels heavy, as if the entire room is holding its breath, waiting for what comes next. Tyler Robinson enters under the watch of two deputies. Shackles clink with each step, echoing through the chamber in a sound that is both metallic and final. His shoulders slump, his eyes dart nervously, and his hands tremble slightly as he takes his place at the defense table. No longer the figure accused of violence, Robinson appears diminished, his once defiant posture replaced by visible fear. The families of the victims watch intently. Some fold their arms tightly across their chests, containing anger and grief. Others clasp their hands together as if bracing for impact. The silence is thick, interrupted only by the shuffling of papers and the faint hum of the overhead lights. Every eye in the room is fixed on the same image, a man about to plead for his life in front of a judge who holds the authority to decide whether he will live or die. Asterisk, to understand why Tyler Robinson now stands before the court pleading for his life, we must return to the crime that placed him here. The victim was insert victim's name if known, otherwise keep generic, a well-known public figure, community leader, innocent bystander. On the night of the attack, what began as an ordinary evening ended in a tragedy that stunned the nation. According to investigators, Robinson armed himself and approached his target with chilling intent. Witnesses described the chaos that followed: gunfire, panic, and lives forever altered in a matter of seconds. Almost immediately, questions swirled about motive. Was this an act of cold-blooded ideology, born out of extremist beliefs? Was it revenge, carried out against someone he viewed as an enemy, or was it the manifestation of a deeper personal struggle, mental illness, instability, or years of unchecked anger? prosecutors pointed to evidence of planning, suggesting calculation and deliberate intent. The defense, however, hinted at a fractured state of mind, arguing that Robinson was a man consumed by turmoil rather than pure malice. The investigation was exhaustive. Detectives pieced together timelines from surveillance footage, eyewitness accounts, and digital records. Forensic teams gathered shell casings, ballistic reports, and DNA evidence. Step by step, the picture became clearer, and Robinson became the prime suspect. Within days, police tracked him down, arresting him without incident. The community breathed a sigh of relief, but the wounds left by the violence were only beginning to surface. What emerged in the weeks that followed was not just a case against Tyler Robinson, but a larger narrative about extremism, instability, and the fragility of public safety in a world where one person's decision can destroy countless lives. When the time came for Tyler Robinson to address the court, the room fell into an even deeper silence. All eyes turned to him, and for the first time in the trial, he had the chance to speak directly, not just through his attorneys, not filtered through evidence, but in his own words. His voice trembled as he rose to his feet, shackles clinking softly as he gripped the edge of the podium. Gone was the sharp defiance that some remembered from his early hearings. Instead, Robinson appeared vulnerable, his eyes red, his tone unsteady. He began with an apology, directed first at the families of the victims. He admitted his guilt, saying there were no excuses that could undo the pain he had caused. He spoke of sleepless nights, of regret that weighed on him every hour of every day. And then came the words that everyone in the room anticipated but still found difficult to hear, his plea for mercy. "I am not the same man I was," he said, his voice breaking. "I ask you, Your Honor, not for freedom but for life. Please do not take from me the only thing I have left. I want the chance to change, even if that change happens behind bars." The defense framed this moment as evidence of genuine remorse, urging the court to consider life imprisonment without parole instead of death. But the prosecution rose swiftly to respond. Their argument was direct and unwavering. Remorse, they said, cannot erase murder. The brutality of the crime, the devastating impact on the community, and the cold planning behind Robinson's actions, they argued, demanded the strongest penalty allowed by law. Then, the judge invited the families of the victims to speak. Their statements brought the courtroom to tears. One described birthdays and holidays that would never be the same. Another spoke of sleepless nights filled with grief and rage. Some demanded justice in the form of the death penalty, insisting that anything less would dishonor the memory of their loved one. Others, though, revealed a more complicated pain. One parent, through sobs, said they could not bring themselves to wish death on another person, even one who had taken so much from them. The clash of voices, Robinson's trembling plea, the prosecutor's demand for the ultimate punishment, and the raw, emotional testimony of the families made the weight of the moment unbearable. In that instant, it was clear that the decision before the judge was not just about one man's fate, but about the meaning of justice itself. When the final words had been spoken, the courtroom fell into a silence so thick it seemed to press against the walls. The judge, seated high above the room, adjusted her glasses and leaned forward, her expression unreadable. In her hands rested not just the legal record of the trial, but the fate of a man who had begged for his life only minutes earlier. For long moments, she said nothing, carefully reviewing her notes, the testimonies and the sentencing guidelines that weighed heavily against Robinson. To the defense, every second of silence felt like hope clinging to life. To the prosecution, it was the calm before the storm of justice they had sought from the beginning. Beyond this one case, however, lingered a debate that had stretched far outside the courthouse. The death penalty remains one of the most divisive issues in the country. Supporters argue it serves as the ultimate form of accountability, a deterrent meant to prevent the most serious crimes. Opponents counter that it is irreversible, prone to human error, and strips away even the possibility of redemption. As Robinson's case captured national headlines, this larger argument loomed like a shadow over the judge's decision. The families of the victims sat frozen, their eyes locked on the bench, their breaths shallow. For some, this was the moment they had waited years to see, justice rendered in its most final form. For others, the thought of another life taken, even under the banner of justice, only deepened their grief. Every creak of the judge's chair, every shuffle of paper seemed magnified. The deputies shifted slightly, awaiting instructions that could determine whether they would escort Robinson back to prison, or into a future that ended in a death chamber. The atmosphere was unbearable, the weight of law, morality, and human life condensed into a single suspended moment. All anyone could do was wait, for the voice of the judge to break the silence and deliver a decision that would reverberate far beyond this courtroom. As the sentencing hearing concluded and news of Tyler Robinson's plea spread beyond the courtroom, the nation's response was immediate and divided. Television networks replayed clips of the hearing, newspapers ran headlines dissecting every word, and social media became a battleground of opinion. Supporters of the death penalty filled comment sections and radio airwaves, insisting that justice could not be compromised. For them, Robinson's remorse was too little, too late. They argued that sparing his life would send the wrong message, that those who commit the most violent crimes could escape the harshest punishment. Families of other crime victims spoke out as well, saying the death penalty was the only true closure they had ever found. Yet, just as passionately, others pushed back. Human rights advocates, faith leaders, and reform activists questioned what was gained by taking another life. They argued that life without parole was punishment enough, stripping Robinson of freedom while still leaving room for reflection, even redemption. Some pointed to systemic flaws in capital punishment, bias, wrongful convictions, the enormous costs, and urged the country to move beyond a practice they saw as outdated and cruel. Political leaders weighed in too. Some used the case to call for stronger laws and tougher sentences, framing Robinson's crime as proof that society must not waver in protecting its citizens. Others urged restraint, reminding the public that justice must be measured not just by punishment, but by principle. In communities across the nation, the debate was not abstract, it was personal. For those who had lost loved ones to violence, the arguments reignited old wounds. For others, it raised urgent questions about what kind of justice system the country should stand for. Tyler Robinson's plea had not only shaken a courtroom, it had reignited one of the most enduring and emotional debates in America, whether true justice is found in the act of mercy or in the weight of finality. As the gavel echoed and the hearing drew to a close, the story of Tyler Robinson remained unfinished. The courtroom had heard his desperate plea, the prosecution's demand for justice, and the voices of families whose grief could not be measured. What happens next, whether he is granted life or sentenced to death, will not erase the pain of the past, nor will it heal the wounds left behind. And yet, this case forces us to confront a deeper question: what does justice really mean? Is it the certainty of punishment delivered in its most final form, or is it the possibility, however slim, that even in the darkest corners of humanity, change is possible? The answer depends on who you ask. For some, justice is closure. For others, it is mercy. For many, it is both and neither. What is clear is that the trial of Tyler Robinson has become more than a courtroom proceeding. It is a mirror, reflecting back the tensions, divisions, and values of a society still struggling to define the line between justice and vengeance. In the end, the fate of one man now rests in the hands of the court. But the larger verdict on what kind of justice we believe in rests with us all.